Okay, good morning, everyone. Almost afternoon. Welcome to this CLE seminar presented by the DuPage County Bar Association. My name is Chuck Rohde. I am a private attorney with the law offices of Rohde and Infleece and Wheaton, and I am the committee chair for the criminal committee for the DCBA this year. And I'm very grateful for having the opportunity to bring this CLE to everyone. We have a really good crowd today, cutting across disciplines. It's not just attorneys who are attending, but we also have members of law enforcement, probation, mental health professionals, and we're grateful for everybody being able to attend. You should be able to hear me by now. All attendees are muted without video. So to answer the question that's been posted already, you should not be able to you should be muted. You won't be heard or overheard or seen throughout this. That said, there is a Q&A function on the bottom. Feel free to use that. I'm going to make a couple of quick announcements, and then we have a very substantive program to present with a number of speakers. And I'd like to get on with it. But that said, a few quick announcements on behalf of the DCBA. First off, the DCBA mega meeting is back and will be held the afternoons of March 5th and March 12th. Chief Judge Kenneth Popejoy's first State of the Courthouse address, a special presentation on diversity in the legal profession from the ARDC, and 4 90-minute webinars will be part of that. You can register on the DCBA website. Registration is also now open on the website for the 7th annual joint DCBA Lawyers Lending a Hand and DCBA in DuPage County Employees Competitive Blood Drive, which is held on March 11th from 8 a.m. to 3:30 in buses that will be at the courthouse. With regard to this particular CLE, again, all attendees will be muted, will not appear on video. Please use the Q&A function. You should have received program materials that are available by clicking on the button in the email with the webinar link from today. Hopefully you've been able to see your program materials. Please make sure you complete the evaluation to receive your CLE credit for today's program. You can find a link to the evaluation on the bottom of page 1 of the agenda, as well as in the blue box in the email. In order to get CLE credit as an attorney, you do have to fill out this evaluation, but we certainly want non-attorneys who are attending to fill it out as well. All feedback is welcome and appreciated. For DCBA members, your attendance certificates for all CLEs is found. You can find it in your member profile following the instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. With regard to the speakers we have, first person I'm going to be introducing is Honorable Judge Paul Marchese, who presides over a call that includes the MICAP and Veterans Court program. We also have Andrea Newman from the Public Defender's Office, Jessica Sisler from the State's Attorney's Office, Ina Caranda from the Probation Department, Elizabeth Galicchio from the Veterans Administration, and Andrew O'Brien and Jeff Latta from the DuPage County Health Department. Further details on their background can be found in the biographical information included in your materials. So before turning this over to Judge Marchese, I just want to say from my perspective as a criminal defense attorney, I know we all come from different perspectives, but from my perspective and speaking with my partner and viewing the cases that we've seen coming into the office since the pandemic has started, it sure seems like our mental health needs have been escalating. A higher percentage of our clients appear to be either in mental health distress or with needs of services. And from an attorney's perspective, knowing about MICAP and Veterans Court and about these options that are available for our clients is not just a professional necessity, it's a professional responsibility, I think, at this point. And when Judge Marchese reached out at the end of 2020 and suggested putting together this CLE, I thought it was an excellent suggestion. I certainly welcomed it, and I am grateful for this presentation for all involved today. I will say, Judge Marchese, and thinking back, we worked together at the state's attorney's office. It was 25 years ago, roughly a quarter century. There's a vast amount of legal experience. I will say that thinking back to the late 90s when I was a young prosecutor, Judge Marchese, or Paul as he was known back then, was somebody who was a supervisor in, I think it was gangs and then narcotics at the time, but he was always somebody who would take an interest and reach out and give assistance to younger prosecutors. And I have distinct memories of that happening more than once on my occasion. And I'm certainly grateful for that. So to that point, I want to turn it over to Judge Marchese. I will and will be sharing a screen with a PowerPoint to go along with this conversation. And again, thank everybody for attending. And please use the Q&A function for questions. If this is a 90-minute presentation, if we run over, we will do everything we can to provide answers to any questions that are presented. And we'll also produce a handout as far as a Q&A catch-up as well, if necessary. So with that, Your Honor, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Chuck. I appreciate that. So I have to tell you that I'm a little inspired by having our seminar today. When you think about it, before the pandemic, we probably would not have been doing something like this on Zoom, where we're actually be able to get this collaborative effort with 200 people all appearing on a Zoom platform to be able to share ideas and to talk about these different issues. So it's actually pretty cool. And in a way, it's almost like with regard to the pandemic, almost like taking advantage of the pandemic, and it kind of feels good. So a couple of preliminaries. First of all, I'm just giving you a little heads up. We're going to be bouncing back and forth between mental health court, or MICAP as we call it here in DuPage County, and the Veterans Court call. It'll be a little awkward, but we wanted to take advantage of everybody who is here, the fact that they're here, so that we could present on both, so that kind of double the learning. Apart from the members of the Veterans and MICAP team, Jeff Latta is going to appear, and he actually is here with us. He's going to present more on a broad spectrum on services available through the health department. So make sure you hang out for that. And then also, with regard to the handouts you received, one of the things we wanted to do is send you with resources away from today's presentation, from the health department, from NAMI, from the VA, from the Veterans Commission. They're all with you. My one request with those: send them out. Don't hide them. Feel free to share them with other officers, with other people, with other lawyers. We want to make sure the message gets spread out with regard to what we're doing, so that everybody understands exactly what we're doing. So first of all, and Chuck, actually, I don't see the I don't see the PowerPoint myself. So I'm hoping that you're showing it. There we go. There it is. Great. Leave it right there. That's fine. Thanks, Chuck. So, okay, now there you go. Almost. All right. Sorry about that, folks. So, last time we did a presentation was actually in November on Veterans Day. We did it just on veterans issues and on Veterans Court. And there were some questions about statistics. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that as an introduction to our presentation today. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Chuck. With regard to mental illnesses, 4 to 6% of our population has what's called a serious mental illness, and that's according to the NAMI website. Why do we have MICAP? Well, 25% of inmates have a serious mental illness. Again, that's according to the NAMI website. With MICAP, we try to provide services and stabilize and improve the lives of participants. We also try to stabilize the community. In other words, participants have families, they have neighbors. The community has to pick up the slack and help out when someone does suffer from a mental illness. So it stabilizes the community. And mental health courts generally decrease recidivism. I will tell you, with regard to the statistics that I cite here, I can't vouch necessarily for these. I got them off the internet, but it's on the internet, so they must be true. Having said that, I wanted to talk a little bit about just what I was able to find online about recidivism in mental health court as well as Veterans Court. One study showed that basically recidivism is cut about in half with when somebody graduates from a mental health a mental health court program. And you can see the numbers there. It goes from 74% recidivism to 39% recidivism. Mental health court and veterans court are not studied very much. So if there's any social scientists out there, a big study is needed as to both of those in terms of recidivism. There's a lot of small studies, but nothing very cohesive. Then there's a second study that finds that 3.7 times, after enrollment and completion of a mental health court program, graduates were 3.7 times less likely to reoffend when compared to non-graduates. So that's some mental health court statistics. I put the sites on there. Feel free to look them up. There's other studies as well. With regard to then veterans court, you can go to the next slide, Chuck. And with veterans, the way I think of it, it's people who are giving up their freedom in order to protect our freedom. The numbers are startling. I actually had to cut these down to get it onto one slide. I wanted to put a lot more on here, but I thought that they're pretty breathtaking, shocking numbers. 30% of returning military personnel from Iraq and Afghanistan have a mental health condition that requiring treatment, things like PTSD, major depression, other things as well. There's controlled substance issues. Some people receive injuries. There's trauma and trauma resulting in mental illness. The number that's one particular study that I cite suggests that 730,000 people have mental health conditions when they're returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. Less than 50% of veterans in need receive any treatment. 30% of active duty personnel binge drink, and the suicide rate among vets is almost double the suicide rate of the general public. And a large percentage of veteran suicides are over 50% are accompanied by alcohol or controlled substance use. For some of these individuals, it leads to arrest. So why do we have a veterans court? Participating veterans experience significant improvement in PTSD, in depression, substance abuse, overall functioning, emotional health, relationships. In terms of the numbers with recidivism, veterans court is the least studied problem-solving court. There's not that many studies on them. I cited a couple here. One of them talks about having a 90% recidivism rate, and the measuring points were 6 months and 12 months after graduating veterans court. Another one is from San Diego. That example from San Diego showed a 4% recidivism rate. So to back up a little bit, people were looking to put in a problem-solving court. Appropriate candidates, we try to get people who are high risk and high need. That's what we're aiming at. Generally, they have criminal history. Usually they have lots of criminal history, and that's just kind of what we're looking for to have the kind of success that we want. So in that San Diego example that they cited, they compared it to prison inmates. I'm not sure that's not comparing apples and oranges, but that's what they compared it to. The 4% recidivism rate from the San Diego Vets Court compared to a 60% recidivism rate of prison inmates. So at any rate, the numbers do show that recidivism is decreased. I guess the thing about veterans court, and the thing about veterans returning who have these issues from their experience, not only did they give up their freedom to protect our freedom, but then they come back, maybe they have mental health, maybe they've had trauma which caused mental health issues, maybe they have a substance abuse issue. The fact that they gave up their freedom to protect our freedom, they come back and then they get arrested. And so they lose their freedom based on having served us. So that's why veterans court, that's why it's so important, in my opinion. Okay, Chuck, next slide. So some definitions, and these are straight out of the statute. Veterans court is a structured judicial intervention process. It's designed to address mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and other treatment issues. Who can be in it? Eligible veterans, substance abuse professionals, mental health professionals, veterans professionals, and local social programs are used with the veterans court programs. And we use intensive judicial monitoring. Mental health court is similar. We just really don't have the VA involved in it. So it's once again, it's a structured judicial intervention process. for mental health treatment, eligible defendants are who it's geared to. Again, mental health professionals, local social programs, and then it's once again intensive judicial monitoring. So in terms of the mission of each of these programs, we'll start with the veterans. It's to enhance the quality of life, to engage the veterans in treatment through the VA, and we follow the problem-solving court 10 key concepts of drug courts, and that's per the statute. That's why it's worded that way. Again, we want them to develop new skills. We want to reduce recidivism and reduce the stigma of a criminal record. With the MICAP program, it kind of mirrors the same thing, except the Veterans Court is not, the VA is not involved. So it's to enhance the quality of life for those who have a mental illness, to engage them in treatment and community-based support systems. Again, we follow the problem-solving court 10 key concepts of drug courts. We want them to develop new skills. It's to reduce recidivism and to reduce the stigma of mental illness and also a criminal record. So the 10 key components, I can't do this justice in the amount of time that we have allotted to us here. So I'm really going to hit on really 3 things that are relevant to my role as the judge. First of all, they talk about a non-adversarial approach. It's very collaborative. And I guess what I mean by that is the attorneys who are really good in problem-solving courts are working as a team. Yes, private defense attorneys, you are part of the team. We need you. Often some of the best recommendations for what to do come from the private attorneys in terms of a sanction or an incentive or a suggestion, to resolve some issue with regard to treatment. So it's collaborative. In terms of judicial interaction, it's totally different than anything you've ever seen if you've never seen a problem-solving court. The participants, I almost always call them by their first name unless they're uncomfortable with that. It's very relaxed. As the judge, I spent about 3 minutes with every individual on their status dates. It is, as I said, it's not formal. And then what I do as the judge, I try to incorporate motivational interviewing into my interaction with everybody. So I try to make their success seem like it's their idea by kind of going through how things have been going between the court dates. If you don't know much about motivational interviewing, it's worth looking into. It's actually was a recommendation actually made by our therapist, Andy, and it actually, I think it's pretty effective. The third key component I wanted to talk about is partnerships. Honestly, that's what kind of today is. I'm glad we're able to reach out to everybody. Our partners in both veterans and MICAP are a huge part of our success. From the police departments and law enforcement who's here, to the Veterans Commission, to the Veterans Administration, we actually have a bunch of public officials who've joined us today. Nami is a huge, we work with them a lot. We collaborate with them a lot. That's how you succeed. That's how you have long-term success. I know that my presiding judge and the presiding judge in problem-solving courts, Judge Ann Celine O'Heller and Walsh, is huge on collaborating. It's something she encourages us to use our creativity to do as the judges in each of these courts, and that's something we try to do. And we want you to collaborate with us too. So include us on the things you do. I know Nami invited me to an event they had last year and I was sure to attend. So include us as well. Okay, Chuck. So who qualifies? For veterans, it's, obviously somebody who's charged with an offense. Now, I'm wording this carefully. Someone who is not dishonorably discharged qualifies for Veterans Court. So notice I didn't say you have to be honorably discharged. So there are kind of middle discharges, maybe based on a medical reason or something else that would cause somebody to be discharged for something less than honorable, but not dishonorable. That'll get you into Veterans Court. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get, or the participant is going to get VA benefits, and I'm sure Liz will discuss that. So not dishonorably discharged, somebody with a mental health, substance abuse, or other treatment need, and he meets the eligibility criteria. For MICAP, again, somebody charged with a criminal offense who is diagnosed or exhibits symptoms of a mental illness. So there doesn't have to be a written diagnosis. If they're showing the symptoms, they can be When they go through the screening process with us, they'll be seen by a therapist who can diagnose that. Mental illness is a contributing factor, and then they meet the eligibility criteria. Okay, Chuck, there we go. So what needs are addressed? You can read this. Obviously, it's psychiatric consultations for meds, mental health services, crisis interventions, substance abuse, employment programs, and I'm going through the veterans right now, referrals for co-occurring treatment, cognitive behavioral groups, trauma-focused treatment, domestic violence, anger management, and housing. For mental health court, it's everything except for housing. So they're the same sorts of treatment. There's actually other ones that aren't listed here, but those are the predominant needs that are addressed. Okay, Chuck. So goals of the MICAP and Veterans Court program: to reduce the stigma of a criminal record is for both programs; to reduce the number of crimes, again for both programs; to reduce the number, time, and cost of incarceration for both programs. For Veterans Court, to improve access to the Veterans Administration benefits and services; also to redirect veterans with treatment needs to the VA from the courtroom. For MICAP, it's to reduce the number of days of psychiatric hospitalization, and also in addition to the three I mentioned earlier, it's to increase the quality of life and to develop new schools, provide new skills, provide treatment and support, and to gain a sense of self-sufficiency moving forward. So the members of each team, I've already alluded to it. Obviously, there's the judge, the public defender or private attorney, the assistant state's attorney, our probation department, and the VA outreach specialist. With regard to the mental health court, the MICAP program, again, the judge, the public defender or private attorney, the assistant state's attorney, probation officer, and the health department therapist. So this is kind of just a flow chart of both programs. They're basically the same from application all the way through to graduation. I'm going to let other people cover that. Okay. So tips for attorneys, and these kind of came from the teams. Again, I would suggest to you, and I never practiced criminal defense, but I would suggest to you that every client on every criminal case should be asked about mental health issues and to find out if they've ever had mental health treatment or if the report indicates that there's some mental health issue. If nothing else, it's mitigation. But beyond that, you want your client to take advantage of an opportunity maybe to walk away without a criminal charge or with a reduced criminal charge, or if maybe they're about to go to prison, to not go to prison to participate in the program. The same with Veterans Court. You should ask every defendant if they have ever served in any of the armed forces for any length of time. Notice how I said that. It's not merely are you a veteran, because some people perceive that differently based on their discharge or whether they actually served in combat. So everybody who walks in the door, every client, you should ask that question to, in my opinion. One thing that I think sometimes attorneys are so bent on getting their client who they see with a mental health issue or see who is a veteran, they want to get them into the program. Both Veterans Court and MICAP are difficult programs. They're much more difficult than probation. There's multiple things for them to do, a huge schedule of events that they have to do per the week. And it's a lot of responsibility, a lot of work. The expectations for the performance of these individuals, the participants, is high. Your client needs to want to change, and he or she needs to work hard if they're going to be in the program. So that conversation has to happen. We've had people who kind of get into the program and they're stunned by how much they have to do, and that it's much harder than any probation they've ever had before. I'm going to ask, we did go through certification with the AIOC. I ask now on every single case if you have reviewed the handbook with your client, if your client has the handbook and if you reviewed it. It's just good practice. Again, these programs are difficult, they're hard, and you want your client to know their expectations. So you have the handbook now, they're available in court. If you don't have it, they're going to be given a copy. Make sure that your client knows the expectations. So medical marijuana, we get people who get into the program and then they go out and they do whatever it is. They get issued a medical marijuana card to them, not prescribed, but issued. And they think they're okay because they have a medical marijuana card. Even though maybe they have a mental illness now, they can use marijuana. So it's a zero tolerance program. Both of these problem-solving courts are zero tolerance. The point is, I understand it's legal in Illinois. The treating psychiatrist is the person that has to sign off, and they have to put it in writing on their letterhead. So if they want to use medical marijuana, and I could foresee possibly there might be a reason that somebody would actually get to do that. But if the psychiatrist has to okay it, and he has to do it in writing for your client to be able to use medical marijuana while they're in the program. Okay, Chuck. So when you apply for either program, make sure your client, and this sounds stupid, but part of the program, you have people who have a lot of issues that cause them difficulty with organizational skills. And the best attorneys, the ones who are really great in problem-solving courts, are the ones who make sure their client are where they're supposed to be, doing what they're supposed to be, providing the paperwork and cutting the red tape. So your client who's applying for mental health court, they have to take the call once they're approved for screening, take the call from probation and attend the screening appointment. One of the things we look at for eligibility is amenability. And we have people who miss 2 or 3 appointments. Is that person appropriate? If they can't even pick up the phone, if they can't make their appointment, maybe not. So make sure that they do those things. Attorneys need to be at every staffing and status date. This is actually an ongoing issue. You're part of the team. You're part of your client's team. And so we want you there. I guess it'd be an ex parte communication for us to go into everything without you there. So it creates all sorts of issues when attorneys fail to be at staffing and at the status date. Maybe more importantly, though, we had a seminar through the Illinois Association of Problem-Solving Courts. There's a statistical increase when the attorneys are present from at the staffing and at the court dates for a participant. So you're ensuring your client's success. Some attorneys kind of do I used to call it the dump and run, where they admit their client to the program and then they get out right away. I think you're doing your client a disservice when you do that. You know the family, you know the supports, you can connect them, you know who you have to talk to get a participant involved and to get their family involved. I understand sometimes that has to be done, but it's probably better. You probably have a better relationship with the family than an attorney they've never met before. Again, the private attorneys, the public defenders are the effective ones, really help their clients get through the program. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this last one. It says beyond certification. Both of the teams have worked to improve the programs. We have this feeder system. Again, one of our partners in this, Sheriff Mendrick, has, it used to be we would get people who were out of the jail and we would get participants sent to us for mental health court and for the veterans court out of the jail population. And that's good. Maybe, a few hundred, whatever, 300, 400, 500 people. What we wanted them to do is, instead of just the people who are incarcerated, open it up to the other 80, 90% of defendants and try to, when they can, send those to us as well. Sheriff Mendrick jumped on that, and we actually have cases being sent to us of somebody who maybe has mental health issues, or somebody is showing symptoms or is on psychotropic medication. They'll just send us a list. The reason I'm telling you this, particularly for the defense attorneys, is you're going to get letters for people who possibly might be eligible for the program. That just means maybe they're a veteran, or maybe, and they're charged with a criminal offense, or maybe they are showing mental health symptoms or are taking psychotropic meds or whatever. And so we found out about that. So we sent you a letter. Check the statute, make sure they're eligible. Obviously, you got to do your due diligence as well. So that's the feeder system. I'm not going to go through some of these other ones. Thanks. So for the police, and these are pretty easy, and the best police departments already do these. When you have an individual who is good for the program, your arrestees. Sometimes the police reports kind of just state the facts and maybe not the weird things that are going on or the unusual things that might make someone appropriate for MICAP or make us know the person is a veteran. Put it right in the report. A lot of police departments do this. Possible MICAP candidate or possible Veterans Court candidate. Put that language in the police report. A lot of misdemeanor assistants don't even know what these are because they're new, and a lot of assistant public defenders the same way. They tend to be younger and less experienced. So that would be one tip that would help us. Call the, if you have a MICAP or a Veterans Court appropriate participant, call probation. They'll be happy to reach out to the attorney and see if the person is interested and if they're eligible. Use your probation officer as a resource. Our probation officers can do shift training. I know Dina Caranda does that on MICAP and Veterans Court. Invite them. Attend a MICAP or Veterans Court graduation. You are all invited. I'm inviting you to Friday, this Friday, the 26th at 10:30. It's at 18thjudicial.org, and click on My Courtroom 4001 for the remote proceedings so you can watch a graduation. Again, you can learn about MICAP and Veterans Court partners. I've already mentioned the Veterans Administration. Nami has a program right now called PD Connect. I talked to Jerry Kurger about it, and it's actually in the paperwork that I gave you, but what they're looking to do is they want to connect the police officers to resources, maybe before arrest, maybe when showing symptoms of a mental health situation, and you can address that up front. Make use of those resources at the health department through NAMI and through our other partners as well. Okay, Chuck. Okay, I'm done. Thanks for listening. I know I talked fast. I appreciate it.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Andrea Newman. I'm an assistant public defender. I work in the MICAP, veteran, and drug courts. Today, I'm going to go over with you how to apply your clients to MICAP or veteran court. I did, in this PowerPoint presentation, there's the statute for both MICAP and veteran court and the eligibility requirements. So I'll let you review that on your own. I'm just going to go over the basics of how to apply someone to either of these courts. So when you're speaking with your client and you're thinking about MICAP court, you want to make sure that your client is 18 years or older. You want to make sure that your client is a DuPage County resident. Residency is required for MICAP because most of the services that a MICAP participant gets is through the DuPage County Health Department. So if your client is not a resident, they would not be eligible for services through the health department. Also, say that they do have services set up in another county. Probation finds it very difficult to be able to track those services and to just stay in contact with how treatment is going. And if, of course, if they don't have services set up and they're out of county, it's very difficult for probation to set those services up. You want to also make sure that all of your clients' pending cases are taken care of and resolved before you apply them to MICAP. That means out-of-county cases, also DuPage County cases. So say your client has maybe 3 DuPage County cases and you want to apply 2 of them to MICAP, but you want to take one to trial. Do not apply the other cases to MICAP until that 3rd case that you're taking to trial is resolved. You also want to make sure that the charges that you're applying to MICAP are probationable. They have to have a sentence that can be probationable in order to be eligible for MICAP. MICAP is now taking misdemeanors, felonies, and they're also taking DUIs now. So the time frame for a misdemeanor, your client would be in MICAP for a minimum of 1 year. For a felony charge, they'd be in MICAP for a minimum of 2 years. So once you find your client, if you determine that your client is eligible for MICAP, how do you apply them? Well, when you get to the courtroom, you want to fill out some paperwork. One is the MICAP application order. This is filed with the court. It basically is your client consenting to have his case transferred to courtroom 4001, and that they will speak with probation and sign any releases that need be. They also need to fill out a MICAP packet. I cannot stress to you enough the importance of this packet. You should fill this packet out with your client. This packet contains contact information. It'll contain any mental health diagnoses that this person has, any treatment that they are currently involved in or have been involved in. It also provides the nexus between the alleged crime and this person's mental health issues. And there's also a release that the person signs for probation. Both the MICAP application order and the packet they're located in all the felony and misdemeanor courtrooms. And they're usually they're at the clerk's desk. So you probably will need to ask the clerk for both an order and a packet. So as far as the packet, I would go through this with your client, and to be sure that it gets to probation, I would walk it over. Probation's in room 135 in the 503 building. If you're trying to stay out of the courthouse, I would get the paperwork together, and you can scan it and email it to Bernadine McFarland, who is our program manager, and I can put that in the chat section. I'll give her email address. So MICAP is always on a Friday. And the first initial court date, it's most likely that your client can appear over Zoom, and that would be at 9:20 a.m. in courtroom 4001. And again, with this packet, if probation does not receive the packet, nothing will happen between the first initial court date that you apply your client and then the first status date. This packet notifies probation that there is a person applying, and it also starts to generate a criminal history report. The criminal history takes a minimum of 3 weeks. We need to review that just to make sure that your client is not somehow statutorily ineligible due to a past crime that could be in their background. So when you are getting your Friday date, make sure that it's 3 weeks or longer for your person, and that date is just going to be able to tell your client that yes, you're going to move forward in MICAP, or we're going to have to withdraw your MICAP application because for some reason, maybe your client was not appropriate. So that's how you apply someone to MICAP. Veteran court, it's not much different. Veteran court, your client does need to be 18 years of age or older. They do not need to be a DuPage County resident. The reason for this is most of the services that the veterans do receive is through the VA in Hines, Illinois. You do need to make sure that your client has been honorably discharged from service or other than honorably discharged. These two types of discharges from the military allow, for the most part, a person to receive services through the VA. And Liz will speak about that more in just a little while. Again, all pending cases need to be resolved for your applicants and any pending cases. Any pending cases need to be resolved. How you apply somebody in court for veteran court is you just have to have the veteran court order application. There's no packet for veteran court. So once you file that application order for veteran court in court, you don't have to do anything else. Probation is notified of your client applying. Again, I would get a 3-week date so we could have the criminal history generated, and court for veterans is at 9:05 a.m. and the first initial court appearance could be over Zoom as well, because that's just going to be to determine if that person is going to move forward or if their case will be withdrawn. One other thing I just wanted to talk about is, the judge touched on it, that staffings are very important for the attorneys to attend. Staffings are basically a meeting that we have that consists of the judge, the assistant state's attorney, myself, probation, the program manager, and the clinicians. We talk about things that are going well with the clients. We'll talk about if the clients are struggling, how to get them back on track. But it's very important that you're there. And during the application process as well, it's important for you to be at staffing, because the assistant state's attorney might be arguing to keep your client out for some reason. Or people might have their own opinions as to why this person isn't appropriate for either MICAP or veteran court. So you need to be there to advocate for your client and provide mitigation. Staffings are always at 12:30 on Thursdays, the day before your client's court date. They are over Zoom. So when you do fill out your application orders for MICAP or veteran court, please provide your email so Bernadine can email you the Zoom link for staffings. And again, yes, there's been studies that show that clients do so much better in these problem-solving courts when their attorneys are present for staffing, when they're aware of what's going on with their clients, what they're doing well with, if they're struggling. The client's success rate is so much better when the attorneys participate. So that's all I have this afternoon. I'm more than willing to answer questions at the end of this presentation, and thanks for coming.
Hello, so thank you, Andrea. So I'm going to be talking about the staffing and kind of going into more details about what Andrea just stated. My name is Jessica Sisler. I'm the Assistant State's Attorney who covers all of these specialty courts in DuPage right now. So staffing, what is it? Just like Andrea stated, it's an open discussion with the team and the defense attorney about a defendant's application. through their eligibility, acceptability, and then the progress through the program from either graduation or to possible termination of the client's participation. Again, like Andrea stated, it's on Zoom, 12:30 p.m. the Thursday before the Friday court date. And you will get that email link through email from Bernadine McFarland. That's why it's really important on your application to put your own email address as a private attorney so that we can get that information sent out to you. Next is staffing. What does an attorney's, or when does an attorney's involvement end? The short answer would be until you withdraw from the case or you ask for co-appointment of the public defender. The long answer is it does not end. Statistics, like Andrea stated, show that participants do better when their attorney stays on from the start of an application through their graduation. If a defense attorney does not appear during staffing, the application is stalled, and usually the team will ask for the application to be withdrawn because we can't move forward without your participation. It is also the defense attorney's responsibility to appear and attend staffing. As much as I want to help you, as much as Bernadine McFarland wants to help you, we cannot be sitting on our email or text messaging you every single week about your status of your client's case, the time that they should appear the next day, whether or not they need to appear in Zoom or in person. It's your responsibility if you're filling out an application to get to staffing. Now going through eligible versus acceptable. So I really urge all private attorneys, even police officers, to read People versus Parento. The ruling in a nutshell, and this kind of applies to all specialty courtrooms, is that if a defendant is statutorily eligible, so they're not statutorily excluded, they should be screened and the application should be moved forward and be screened and evaluated by the team. However, this does not mean that your client is necessarily acceptable for any of the specialty courts. If a defendant is found eligible, like I said, they'll move forward, but then it's up to the team to discuss whether or not someone is acceptable for the program. If you look under Webster's definition, it says that acceptability is a quality of being tolerated or allowed. From a legal standpoint, I kind of think of staffing as an argument made from a defense attorney and a state's attorney during a bond hearing. You look at those mitigation factors, you look at the aggravation factors. That's kind of what the team is doing at this point during staffing. Everybody gives their input and you decide whether or not your client is appropriate for the program. So how does staffing exactly work for defense attorneys and for your clients? Clients are not allowed during staffings. It's only the team as well as the defense counsel. Everybody gives their input. It's kind of like a 402 conference in my mind. It's a very open discussion. Everybody kind of feeds off of each other on what you want to present, what mitigation factors there are for the client being in the program, what aggravation factors there are. And the end result is that Judge Marchese will make a decision. He will sometimes pose questions, ask for additional follow-up information, but at the end, he will make a decision based on the team discussion and the defense attorney discussion on whether or not that client is acceptable for the MICAP or Veterans Court program. If the team finds that the client or defendant is not acceptable, Judge Marchese will first ask that the defense counsel withdraw the application, or we can have it on the record that it's formally being rejected, and then the case will return to the home courtroom. If it's found acceptable, the state will decide whether a contract will be extended. And this is kind of like the plea agreement. So in my role, I will extend an offer to you. If I do not extend an offer to you, there is a potential for the court, Judge Marchese, to enter into a contract with a defendant, and that's based on statute. As far as contracts go, you should not be applying your clients to these specialty courtrooms thinking that it's an automatic dismissal. It is pure and simple, a case-by-case basis on which contracts will end up with a nollie or complete dismissal of all charges. The state looks at all of the aggravation, all of the mitigation that was submitted during staffing, and then decides the terms on what's appropriate. Here, misdemeanors are about a 12-month program, and felonies are about 24-month program. Some people can end early, as quick as 18 months, depending on how quickly they advance through the phases, which probation will speak to in a little bit. Additional conditions that you can see on some contracts would be restitution, no contact orders, no entry orders, possibly orders of protection included, apology letters to officers, DASA counseling for DUI charges, attending the victim impact panel, having a scram or track monitoring, GPS, lab fees, statutory minimum fines or jail sentences for DUIs, for example. And in this, like I said, the state will extend a contract offer to most people who are found acceptable. I will provide that contract to the defense attorney via email if that's the easiest way to get a hold of you. And then you can work with your client to see if that's something that they're interested in moving forward with. Additional documents that you need to sign on the day of contract execution is the consent to participate, a jury waiver, and then the handbook acknowledgement form. So for staffing for MICAP and veteran court contracts, you're going to look at section 18, and that is the portion that says, first, the defendant will enter a plea of guilty to the following charges, and then additional conditions will be applied in that section. And then section 2 says, upon successful completion of the program, the party agrees as follows. Either the state will move to nollie process the charges and the plea will be vacated, or there will be an agreed upon sentence, which will be imposed, and the time will be considered satisfactorily served. So if the agreement was your client will be in the program for serving 24 months probation, it'll already be considered served based on their time elapsed in the last 24 months. It's not going to be an additional 24-month sentence. And then these are just some examples that you can look at for contracts. And if anyone has any other further questions, I'm going to put the state's attorney MICAP email in the chat function as well. Thank you.
Oh, no. I'm Dina Caranda, the Senior Probation Officer for MICAP and the only probation officer in Veterans Court. If we could go back a slide, please. So once the screening and assessment is completed, the probation officer, and for Veterans Court, the Veterans Justice Outreach Specialist, and for MICAP, the clinician at the health department will proceed to do the screening and assessment to make sure that the person qualifies for Veterans Court or MICAP. And what we do at that point is, if you're wondering if there's a mental health issue because you thought you saw some symptoms or they reported a mental health issue, that's when we determine, because the Veterans Justice Outreach Specialist is a licensed clinical social worker, and Andy from the health department is a licensed clinician. We're able to determine that there is for sure a mental health diagnosis. So you don't necessarily need to know for sure at the onset if you're working with a client that has a diagnosis, because we're going to know that before, once the assessment is completed. And probation is doing the criminal risk assessment. So earlier when you heard the judge and others talk about high risk, high need, that's what the criminal risk assessment determines. So we'll determine if they're high risk and what areas we're going to be looking at. So that's what the criminal risk assessment does. It helps us determine if we're going to key in on mental health, substance abuse, anger issues, and what needs we might be looking at, as far as perhaps they need housing, perhaps they need certain areas to clue in on as far as trauma needs. That's what we're doing at the original assessment. Once they're screened, some of the roles of the probation officer are to be the liaison between the treatment courts and the treatment providers in the court. We monitor compliance of bond conditions. We monitor the drug testing and set up the parameters for that. We prepare the court status forms. and we monitor the bond conditions because they enter a plea of guilty, but they're technically on bond conditions the entire time. We conduct meetings at the probation department. We do home visits. We meet with them in the field or sometimes at treatment centers. And we refer participants to the appropriate types of treatment they might need, whether that's within the probation department, at the health department, at the VA, as well as other places in the community. Next slide, please. We've been talking a lot about the zero tolerance policy in MICAP and Veterans Court. So I won't go into this too much, but we do monitor all the drug use within the probation department. So there is no drug or alcohol use while they're in these programs, and that includes no recreational marijuana. The judge already talked about the medical marijuana and needing a letter from the treating psychiatrist in both programs. We have a variety of ways that we do monitor drug and alcohol use. The typical ways through the drug testing system, the urine tests. We do use SCRAM, the track device, drug testing patches, and saliva tests as well. And sometimes for convenience, probationers or clients could also drug test at the treatment centers. I do have some veterans testing at the VA since they're there sometimes 5 days a week. It's sometimes just convenient for them to be able to test at the treatment centers. Repeated positive drug tests, of course, we're going to have to address, and sometimes that'll be addressed with a treatment response. So they'll have to do a substance abuse evaluation, or sometimes, especially if they're dishonest about their drug use, we might be using a sanction to address those issues. So we really address honesty in our program. And the judge, if you're ever in court, you'll hear him talk about how important honesty is, and basically telling on yourself, which is seems counterintuitive for the clients, but we really try to work with them and talk about that continuously. So we could treat them as best as possible and work with them through their issues. We offer at the probation department a variety of services, including cognitive behavior groups such as MRT and Thinking for a Change. We do have a women's trauma group called Moving On. We do have employment resources right at the probation department with an employment resource officer, as well as employment resource groups. We have a variety of different journals, workbooks, and worksheets that we use with each person on our caseload as needed. But a lot of times we are referring to other outside agencies, mainly the health department for MICAP and the VA for Veterans Court. But we use other agencies in the community. Nami, we partner with a lot, and we've started using them for community service as well recently, which has been working out great because the people in MICAP then get a taste of what services Nami offers, as well as being able to pay back by providing them with some community service hours. So that partnership has been going really well so far. And we also have all our participants go through a Nami Orientation as part of phase 1 or phase 2, which I'll get to in a second. So they learn all the services that Nami has to offer. Next slide, please. We do work on incentives and sanctions in our program, and some of the incentives that we have for people that are doing well. And some of those behaviors might be attending probation appointments and treatment appointments regularly. And we're hoping for 100% attendance, but we strive for the best that we could get. Attending court dates, providing clean drug tests, successfully completing treatment, and completing homework and written assignments. Those are some examples that we might be giving incentives for. And some of the incentives that we are able to use, and we're always trying to improve our incentive programs, but we are limited on what we can use. Praise from the judge is number one. He does give positive feedback quite often and is good about doing that. We do have applause in the court. So if you happen to be in 4001 and hear applause, that means someone is doing a good job of completing their program well. They get called early in court. So the judge is really good, and the clerk, about flagging certain cases that we talk about in staffing. So Friday morning, certain cases will be flagged to get called early because they're doing well. We give certificates as people advance through phases. They get a phase advancement certificate, We've given all-star certificates, most improved certificates. We try to do as much positive stuff as we can in the courtroom to praise people for how they're doing. Next slide. On the flip side, we do have to use sanctions when things aren't going so well. So dishonesty might be a reason why we have to give sanctions if they're not forthcoming with things that are with a new arrest, with positive drug use or positive drug tests. They're missing appointments, blowing off appointments and not calling ahead of time, not taking their prescribed medicine, testing positive for drugs, missing court, and just not following through with their treatment plan or case plan that probation and the treatment provider have for them. So some examples of sanctions that we use are, the first one, we use graduated sanctions. So we try to start off at the lowest level of sanctions and keep on increasing them as needed. So we probably start off with a verbal reprimand from the judge, increase to writing assignments or thinking reports, as we call them. We might have someone in court every single week until they're back on track and are able to tell the judge that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and things have improved. We use public service or SWAP, maybe more frequent drug tests if the issue is a positive drug test or we want to monitor that. And last but not least, sometimes we do have to use jail as a sanction. We try not to rush into that, and we use that judiciously, I guess you could say, because it could interfere with medication work and other positive things that they have going on. But sometimes we do have to use jail as a sanction. It might be a weekend in jail. And typically we try not to use more than 5 days of jail sanction. I believe that's what the standards say is the sanction that should be used. Next slide, please. I mentioned, and you've heard throughout the presentation, there's 4 phases in both MICAP and Veterans Court. The first phase is orientation and stabilization. Basically, that's to get them going in the program, get them familiar to understanding what each program looks like, get them set up with their services, get them to understand what coming to court on a regular basis is going to be like, meeting with their probation officer and treatment provider, the drug testing situation, the payment plans, just kind of getting going. The second phase is skill building and understanding of treatment needs. So in phase 2, they're probably going to be engaged in treatment, probably starting their employment classes, maybe some education groups, but they should be well into their treatment in phase 2 and have a better idea of what the program is. And in phase 1 or phase 2 is when they'll attend the Nami and MICAP orientation group, which is mandatory for one of these 2 phases. Next slide. Phase 3 is community engagement and action. So in here, they're still probably going to be in some type of treatment. Mental health treatment is kind of ongoing throughout. So someone may be seeing a psychiatrist or a therapist the entire time they're in the program. And even we would encourage that to continue on even when they're done with the program. But some other types of programming, such as substance abuse and other types of groups, they might be getting towards the end of the participation in certain groups and starting to really know how to use the groups and coping skills that they're learning and being able to explain how they're using their coping skills in real life situations. Phase 4 is the maintenance and graduation phase. So by now, they're wrapping up their service. There may be they have a leadership role in the groups. They've really been able to name some of their support groups or support systems, I should say, who they lean on when they need to turn to someone. And we try to really emphasize this because soon they're going to be done with the treatment team they have in MICAP. And we want to make sure that they have a support system on the outside for when they're done with MICAP. So this might be a sponsor, maybe a peer mentor at NAMI, a veteran mentor. It could be a family member, a friend, whoever is supportive of them, a pro-social supportive person in their life. And then we prepare them for Veterans Court or MICAP graduation and make sure that they're working on towards their discharge planning and what they're going to do after the fact once they're done. Next phase. And that's all for me. Liz is next.
Thank you, Dina. And these first slides will go quickly. As you can see, some of our goals and vision and mission is very much in line with what's been mentioned already as the mission of the specialty courts. My role as a Veterans Justice Program social worker is primarily to make sure that vets involved in the justice system are linked with the appropriate treatment and services that they are eligible for through the VA. So this looks a little familiar, doesn't it? We want to avoid the unnecessary criminalization of mental illness. And with veterans in particular, there is sometimes a fear that they are going to lose VA benefits if they become justice involved. And only in rare situations does that happen. So it's important to ask, as the judge mentioned, if your client has ever served in the military, to ascertain if they're a veteran, and to make a referral to the Veterans Justice Program without concern that they will lose their status as a veteran or lose benefits that they are receiving through the VA. Next slide. So again, our mission, as I've said before, is partnering with the criminal justice system. I receive referrals not just from probation or from the Veterans Court staff directly, but also through jail outreach, sometimes directly from police. And it's important to keep that line of communication open. Again, part of my role is to ensure access to benefits and services, which extends far beyond healthcare. So this is really our vision for all vets whenever possible. And this is in line with the vision of the specialty courts to return vets to a meaningful life as self-reliant, positively contributing members of the community. Okay, next slide. So we know that vets suffer from mental health and substance abuse disorders, but why do they end up justice involved? Obviously, not all vets develop post-traumatic stress disorder, and people can develop post-traumatic stress disorder without being a veteran. But just to give a flavor of some of the symptoms associated with PTSD. This is it in a nutshell, and I want to call attention to a couple of these: hypervigilance, because this is this constant state of tension or being on or waiting for the next shoe to drop. And people suffering from this kind of anxiety state are often not making good decisions. Their judgment can be impaired. And I also want to highlight the mood dysregulation from up to down, and to mention that vets involved in Veterans Court suffer from disorders outside of PTSD. This is associated with veterans, so is traumatic brain injury. We have a number of vets who do have a PTSD diagnosis as well as a TBI diagnosis who are participating in the court. Next slide. So with traumatic brain injury, then we have some cognitive problems. Sometimes these can be mild, but just enough to disrupt functioning, to make it hard to do the things they used to do. A lot of emotional dysregulation with irritability, aggression, poor impulse control. You can already see how some of these symptoms can maybe lead to behavior that makes a veteran become involved with the justice system. Sensory disturbances, that's okay. Some of these things may seem minor. Certainly we can have much more profound brain injury, but we see a lot of these kind of small things that are just a constant irritant affecting a person's mood and functioning, and sometimes decision making. Okay, next slide. So again, these are sort of the correlations with the behaviors that tend to land these individuals in the justice system. We have an increased reactivity. So somebody whose reactions are very overblown for the situation. Obviously, anger and irritability is going to lead to problem behavior, sometimes domestic violence, sometimes other violence. And then our veteran population, well, as with many people, veterans in particular, the culture, the military culture is not one that encourages seeking help. It's not one that encourages admitting that you have a problem. And what a lot of veterans do is to try to take care of it themselves by self-medicating with a variety of substances. Medical marijuana is a way that, you know, a more sanctioned legal way to deal with some symptoms of post-traumatic stress at times. But there's a lot of abuse of other substances, alcohol and other drugs, as a way to self-medicate, to help with sleep problems, to help with mood problems, to help with that anger and irritability, the hypervigilance, to tone things down, turn it off. And this, you know, I can't overemphasize enough this hypervigilance, how it's when vets come home, especially from a combat situation or a very stressful military situation, it's very difficult to flip that switch and start thinking again and behaving again like a civilian. It's not that simple. Next slide. So the VA, and I want to speak a little bit about eligibility. Andrea mentioned the types of discharges, and we certainly have vets applying to the Veterans Court who are not eligible for VA healthcare. In general, healthcare eligibility means an honorable or a general discharge. And also after September 7th of 1980, 24 months of consecutive active duty service. Now there's lots and lots of exceptions. I'm not going to go through all of those. Fortunately, the VA has opened up services to vets with other than honorable discharges, and that does include limited mental health and substance abuse services, so that can be very helpful. We also have housing services available to vets with other than honorable and even bad conduct discharges in some circumstances. So if you're working with a client that says, well, I already went to the VA, they told me I can't get anything there, please don't take that as a hard, cold fact, because things have changed over the years. And I encourage you to call me. I can inquire about their eligibility and what possible services might be available. I also want to reiterate that healthcare eligibility is separate from Veterans Court eligibility. So even if the vet is not eligible for VA healthcare, they can still be applied to the Veterans Court. And I, will assist in tandem with the court team in referring them to treatment resources if they can't receive their treatment through the VA. Stay on that slide for a minute here, because I wanted to talk a little bit more about treatment. Obviously, what's listed here are some of the bigger things. We do have some very specific veterans-focused treatment. We have MRT, moral recognition therapy, which is a specific veterans track of that. It's a different handbook. It's very much geared toward veterans. We have domestic violence and intimate partner violence treatment called Strength at Home, which again is geared toward veterans specifically. So whenever possible, I try to make referrals to these services for vets that are eligible for healthcare. Also, these services are not limited to Hines or the outpatient clinics associated with Hines. I have access to, or our vets, my vets have access to all the VAs within our VISN, Veteran Integrated Service Network, and even beyond. So I've referred vets to Jesse Brown VA, to the Lovell Federal Healthcare Center, even up to Milwaukee for specialized programs that are not possible through Hines VA or the outpatient clinic. There's also vet centers. There's also a program called the Road Home through Rush University Medical Center that is a veterans program, and some of our vets participate in that. We have a lot of suicide prevention resources. Suicide is obviously a huge problem among veterans, and I can't overemphasize the housing assistance. This is something, as I mentioned, that some of our vets who are not eligible for all health care are eligible for some limited housing assistance. That can make a huge difference. Stable housing, particularly in our pandemic conditions right now. To be homeless in the midst of a pandemic can certainly lead to criminal behavior. It can lead to hospitalization. And then we also link with resources in the community. There are some agencies that provide legal assistance for civil matters. The Veterans Assistance Commission is right on the campus there of the courthouse, and they can assist vets with financial assistance for car repairs, paying a month's rent, just to get them over the hump. Next slide. Couple of really important resources here. The Veterans Crisis Line for any type of crisis. Our homeless veterans resources, Hines VA Hospital, more information about post-traumatic stress, and our Veterans Assistance Commission. I've included some handouts, which I know are in a separate place here, that make it easy to contact me. If you ever have questions about vets' eligibility for healthcare or any of these ins and outs, as you know, the VA is a huge bureaucracy. It's very helpful to have a contact person and contact information for someone within that bureaucracy to help you find the answers to your questions, or to help your veteran client find the answers to their questions. And I think that's it for me. Yeah, that's my final slide. So next up is our health department staff.
Hello, everybody. I'm Andy O'Brien. I work with the DuPage County Health Department. I'll be really quick, just have 2 slides here. My role with the MICAP team, and therefore Health Department's role with the MICAP team, is to serve a number of functions. I help out doing the assessments and screenings for the eligibility and amenability for the program. So probation officer and I meet up with your clients after they have their first court date to see how their mental illness and the presenting charge might have been related to each other and how we could help them there. And then the amenability piece to just kind of take their temperature as to whether they're willing to participate and involve themselves in the various programs we have. As the judge says, it's a hard program and there's a lot to do. So we want to see how interested or involved they want to be with that. Beyond the screening and assessment, I can also do individual counseling, individual therapy with those who are eligible to have health department services. And I can also serve as like a case manager and community support person. And then I consult during the staff meetings. So I have a meeting once a week with probation officers, and I have the meeting once a week for the court call, and then I'm present during the court call as well for any mental health needs that might come up. Move on to the next slide. And then I help to link to other treatment modalities that might be in the area or with the health department. I have certain clients who need a higher level of care than an adult outpatient level might be for myself, which would be like a once every week or 2 therapy session. Some people need pretty intensive case management and community support services, and the health department has a team called the Community Support Team, or CST, that helps me out immeasurably with the clients who need those levels of supports. Plus, there's we have a crisis unit and respite unit, and Jeff will cover some of these things too, as well as what the health department provides, but they also are very helpful for me to pass on to the clients. We also have a psychiatrist or psychiatric practitioner to help prescribe medications for the clients, and then also a dedicated nurse to help out people figuring out their medications and gathering them. So that's my specific role, but we're going to move on to Jeff Latta, and Jeff is going to share an overall role of what the health department has and can do in the community. On to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Andy. So my name is Jeff Latta, and I'm the Assistant Director of Adult Outpatient Services here at DuPage County Health Department. As Andy had kind of noted here, that we have a role as one of the treatment providers in mental health court, but thought it would be helpful to give a real broad overview of some of the other behavioral health programs that we offer at the DuPage County Health Department. It'll be beyond the scope of being able to go into any real detail, but at least being able to show what kinds of programs are available to those, especially within the criminal justice system. And also should be in your handouts some contact information, how to get more information on some of these programs will be included as well. So next slide here. So the key thing, and you've heard this come up a couple of times, we get this question quite frequently, is, who do we serve? How can we bring somebody into the health department? And the key two areas are first, age, and really we can take any age. So we serve the entire lifespan, but where it really gets a little bit more tricky is about being a DuPage County resident who has either Medicaid, Medicare, or has no insurance at all. So probably one of the top questions we get oftentimes is, well, why wouldn't somebody who has private insurance be able to get treatment with the health department? The reason for that is, as a community mental health provider, as a county organization, our purpose is really to be the safety net provider for the county, where somebody who really cannot find services anywhere else, and and with a private insurance product, there's DuPage County is actually pretty lucky to have a wide range and wide number of providers in behavioral health care in DuPage County, and our purpose is not necessarily to be competing with that. We're really here to be serving those who have struggles to get treatment elsewhere. So the key thing for us is they do have to be somebody who lives in DuPage County and has Medicaid, Medicare, or no insurance, which in those situations, we have a whole team of people who help people apply for benefits, or in the worst case scenario, if they're not eligible for benefits, they don't have any insurance at all, we are able to operate on a sliding fee scale. Next slide. So just to break down a little bit about who Behavioral Health Services is within DuPage County Health Department. So as you can see, as I noted, I oversee the adult outpatient programs. We also have an adult intensive services program, which is includes a residential program. So we have close to 160 residential beds across the entire county that provides intensive services for those who are unable to care for themselves due to their serious mental illness. It also includes a couple of our more intensive community-based programs that will go out, as Andy had alluded to. We have a community support team who will go out and meet with people in the community upwards of 2, sometimes 3 times a week to make sure that their symptoms are stable. We have a youth and family services program, which really mirrors the same programs I oversee, except for those 18 and under. And then we have a crisis services program, which is the program that's up and running 24/7 and there to handle any emergencies across the whole continuum of mental health. Next slide. I'll break down within the programs for adult outpatients specifically. We offer therapy, counseling, both for mental health and substance use. So we offer programs for mental health. It's more on an individual and family basis. For substance use, we offer treatment programs for outpatient programs, which are about 1 to 2 hours per week. And then we even offer intensive outpatient services for substance use that can be upwards of 9 hours a week of treatment. In addition, for substance use, we also have a medication-assisted treatment program for heroin and opioid addiction, and those groups also are offered here at our main Wheaton campus. We have psychiatric services as part of our programming. We're very fortunate to have a very good team of psychiatrists and nurse practitioners providing that level of care. We do case management in the community. And then last but not least, that I'll give more information on that I think would be more specific to be helpful to know about is our forensic behavioral health program, which MICAP and Andy's role is part of that program. Next slide. So just to give an idea about volume too, so I know that right at the very beginning, Chuck had alluded to that that mental health needs are very significant, and I thought I would just share some general information. We are well over 34,000 crisis calls just last year alone, and just for a reference point, that's 26% more crisis calls compared to last year. And from the year before, we were at about 23,000. So we're about 11,000 more calls just in the past calendar year. It was very significant increased need for mental health services. The same can be said true for our substance use services. We've seen our number of people served go up by almost 50% in the past year. We work closely with a number of other organizations as well to make sure that people are getting treatment. And as you've probably seen in the news, the need for substance use treatment and mental health treatment is very significant right now in the community. In our outpatient program, we saw close to 7,400 people, which is also another significant increase, and 670 in our forensic behavioral health programs. Next slide. So I mentioned it, it's beyond the scope to be able to really go through all the different programs we offer, but, just being able to at least share a little bit more about what kinds of programs are included in our forensic behavioral health program, thought it would be helpful. And, again, you can get more information about this on our website as well. But I've been with DuPage County for 19 years, and ever since I've been with DuPage County, we've always had programs that have worked alongside with criminal justice programs. But it was only about maybe 3.5 years ago or so that we were fortunate to get a grant that pulled together a whole number of people in the community, both on the treatment side, law enforcement, the court system, and did a 2-day really in-depth review of what kinds of interventions were available to those who had serious mental illness issues who found themselves in the court system. And MICAP is definitely one of those feathers in the cap kind of programs that since day one that we've been involved, it's been amazing to see the really strong collaboration that goes on with the court system to help divert those who find themselves in the court system who, traditionally would not be there if they were getting the treatment that they really needed. So that's one of the programs we offer. But I wanted to just share very quickly here some of the other programs that we do have available that are under our forensic behavioral health program. We have a SNAP program, Special Needs Advocacy Program, which is a probation program that we have. It's a direct program relationship with probation where those who are already on probation, but really struggling with their mental illness, struggling with probation requirements, we can actually put them with somebody who has a bit more expertise working through criminal justice programs, as well as some of the behavior problems that typically come up with really seriously mentally ill folks. We have a substance use treatment program that is actually open to anybody in outpatient, not just in criminal justice, but we do have a specific team of forensic behavioral health trained clinicians who do more court-specific type substance use treatment. So we have everything from early intervention, which would be somebody likely who maybe had a DUI but does not quite meet the criteria where they wouldn't have a diagnosable substance use issue per se, but do have some requirements to complete for the court. We offer the early intervention once per week here at the county. And then our other programs, outpatient, intensive outpatient, and then specialized co-occurring. Those three programs really kind of round out all of our substance use programs, everything from somebody who might just need a little bit of individual all the way through, like I said, up to 9 hours of treatment per week. One of the new programs I think is really important to know about. It's not really a new program per se, but it is for us in the sense of the emphasis that the state is starting to put on helping make sure that we're getting treatment to those who really need it. The state about a year ago has now created a formal outpatient fitness restoration program, and we have the contract specifically for DuPage County residents. So this would be for somebody who you know, again, they're found unfit to stand trial, we get those referrals directly from the state. So anybody who is found unfit to stand trial, IDHS, DMH will send those directly over to us, and then our clinical staff will work with those on an outpatient basis. And then last but not least, just to kind of round out some of the other programs that we have in progress right now, we have a number of collaborations actually all across the county with several different police departments. But with DuPage County Sheriff's Office is where we have some of our more robust programming that, again, probably interfaces the most in the courtroom oftentimes. So we have a post-crisis response team, which is a clinician who goes out with a deputy on any call that has come in through the Sheriff's Office for a mental health call. They will go out within 72 hours to do an in-person visit to try to link to treatment. And it's been very successful. And actually that program is one that out of all the different programs with COVID, we actually saw a very significant increase in those calls compared to some of our other programs. We also have a team of substance use clinicians who do classes on the recovery pod within the correctional center. We are fortunate to have a grant, a federal grant, where we are doing medication-assisted treatment prior to release from jail for those who have an opioid addiction. We have a person who works full-time in the county correctional center who is the mental health reentry manager. And what she will do is anytime we have any, if anyone has told us about somebody who is in the correctional center pending release, but has a serious mental illness issue and would benefit from getting linkage, that's her role. She's there full-time and can help with that. And then last but not least, a whole team of us over here at the health department, we assist with the crisis intervention team training with CIT. And aside from that, there's been times that law enforcement departments have called and asked for us to share some information specific to different topics or to different responses. And we're always happy to be able to assist with that. And that wraps up my portion. Sorry, here's some intake information too. Sorry, forgot about this last slide. That main number there, anybody can call to be linked to intake. The second number actually goes to one of our people who specifically assists with forensic behavioral health. And he's our engagement and intake specialist. So again, feel free to share that number. He can answer a lot of questions that might be more specific to forensic behavioral health. And certainly I'm always available as well. And our website has all of the program information I just shared as well. Thank you.
Okay, it was predicted to me that we would be pretty close to 90 minutes as far as this presentation goes, and we are just about there. There was a lot of material. There were some questions that were coming through during the presentation, and it looks like our presenters were trying to answer them. There are a couple outstanding. One was, let's see, MICAP is geared toward mental health, but what resources available for those with an intellectual or developmental disability who might not qualify for MICAP? Anyone have any answers?
I vote Andy answer that one.
Okay.
You know, and the name of the program is slipping my mind. There are services within the county that do help people with autism and developmental disabilities. If anybody could help me out, Dina or Jeff, I can't remember what it's called, as we predominantly usually work with the mental health side of things. Anybody from our CIT training?
I don't know the name of the program, but we do things on a very case-by-case basis. So we have taken some with a secondary diagnosis, possibly of an intellectual or cognitive issue, but definitely not a primary issue. So it's really case-by-case basis. And we have worked with specific therapists that might specialize in autism if that is a need. But it's definitely a case-by-case basis. And yes, thank you for your email address if we are able to think about it.
I think the person who asked that question thought that somebody would not qualify at all for MICAP if they, for example, had autism. That's not the case, right?
It's not necessarily the case. It really is case by case, but we have had some people come into the program that have a diagnosis of autism. It really kind of depends on maybe the severity and their amenability. And because we definitely have worked with people on the spectrum before, for sure.
Yes.
And then there's another question. Are participants able to receive a comprehensive list of email for presenters requesting referrals and so forth? I think that most of the emails are included in the materials. Is that correct? Most email addresses for the people who presented today.
Actually, I don't think mine is, and I'll give it to you right now because I don't care. Just don't talk to me about a specific case, but I'm happy to collaborate. So I'll give it to you right now. It is my last name, Marchese, at 18thjudicial.org. And again, we're looking to collaborate. We want to make what we do better. We're not just satisfied we want to, of course, we're proud to be, when we get certified, we'll be proud to be certified. We want to do better than that. We want to be among the best in the state and the country. So collaborating is how you get there. So feel free to reach out to me. Anybody else?
I'll provide my email address in the chat section. And yes, anybody can reach out to me with any questions regarding MICAP or Veteran Court.
I did have a request if we had any success stories. And certainly we have over many years, and we have graduations quarterly. As you know, the judge said we have a graduation this Friday. And two success stories pop into my head. One is a graduate coming up this Friday. He is graduating. He had a couple felonies, and unfortunately, I can't think of the charges off the top of my head. So if Jessica or Andy want to pop up with some of that information. But this is a MICAP graduate and came to us with some co-occurring issues. So he had some substance issues as well as mental health issues. So struggled with both at the beginning of the program, but really turned things around to the point where he started his own business, has been clean for a long time. And really when I talk to him now, and this is the feedback I recently gave him, like you could tell just by his voice that his mood is stable, his mood is improved, his mood is positive. He's, reconnected with, doing better with his family. Just like I said, he started his own company. I mean, this is like, it was just like one day we talked to him. He's like, oh, hey, I started my own company. It's like, what? Okay. So that is one example of a success story coming up this Friday that if anyone wants to observe the graduation. And a year, I think, well, it was probably 2019. I had a female on my caseload who really put in a lot of hard work. She was a victim of human trafficking. And I know probably Andrea and Andy remember her well. Mm-hmm. She was very well liked by the team and everybody really at the courthouse. She had quite the personality, put in a lot of hard work. Alcohol was her main issue, and trauma, alcohol and trauma, of course. And she successfully completed 2 years of our program, had been clean for a long time, completed treatment. And, she kept in touch with me, even after the program. And I know she's moved on. She's reconnected with her mom and her sister in Arizona and has moved on to live with them. So she's doing well right now too. That was really two good, strong success stories from MICAP.
And Dina, the one that you were speaking of for graduation for this Friday, it is someone who was charged with unlawful possession of controlled substance. There were 2 felony counts. They were consecutive to each other. This was a case-by-case basis. He actually had possession of heroin in both cases. So this is one of those dual diagnoses that could have actually been probably applied to drug court as well. But for whatever reason, back in 2 years ago, they decided mental health court was the better option for this participant. And his charges are actually getting completely dismissed. Like I said, that's not with every single person who applies to the program, but it is with this participant based on the contract, based on the mitigation that was provided 2 years ago.
Yeah, and he struggled with PTSD, depression, anxiety, and some of the behaviors that were going on around the times of the arrest. It kind of looked like bipolar so impulsivity, restlessness, agitation, and so forth. But that's where the kind of co-occurring came into play. And he went through almost every level of care with us through the health department and the outpatient counseling with me, the psychiatric monitoring, and he was in the MAT program, and so was successful in that, moved on through it, did IOP, so intensive outpatient and outpatient with forensic behavioral health, a very involved and successful gentleman. Yeah, that's a great case there.
I can think of a recent graduate. His name was James, just a very, very ill young man who suffered from mental illness, including schizophrenia and post-traumatic stress disorder. He had been homeless. His mental illness was directly linked to his criminal behavior. He was quite psychotic at the time that it occurred. And after getting linked up with the Veterans Court, he received mental health treatment from the VA. I helped link him with VA benefits services, and he had his benefits increased to 100% service-connected benefits. He was successfully in interim housing, and now he's back living with his family. He has a dog. He's very well adjusted, very happy. So that was really a tremendous success story for somebody who was so ill and so dysfunctional.
And just in general, I think all of these cases, this is not a courtroom where you dump your client's case and be done with it. You stick around for the 12 or 24 month period, and you really learn to grow with the client. We see it as a state's attorney, public defender sees it through their eyes, probation sees it, everyone sees the progress and success that they go through in the 12 to 24 months. We all as a team expect for there to be relapses. We expect for there to be some downfalls along the way, but it's getting to that graduation point that really makes this program so special in the county.
I see there's another question here, Chuck. Can I answer it?
Sure.
All right. The question is, what else can you do? I'm rephrasing it. As far as referrals go from the law enforcement side, apart from noting it in the report that it's a possible MICAP or Veterans Court candidate, is there anything else we can do? The answer is yes. Reach out to the probation department, Dina or Bernadine. I think we posted Bernadine's email address. You can also call the assistant state's attorney. Oftentimes with some of the cases, even in felony, they're not that familiar with either of the programs, but that's another possibility. So put it in the report, call the probation department, call the ASA who's assigned to the case, would be some additional possibilities as well. Are there any other questions? Just reading.
And I would say if it's a veteran to give me a call as well,
Right.
Reach out to me, because even if they end up, if they're severely in need of care and end up in even a private hospital, I can make note of that, and we can work on transferring them to the VA to start providing treatment from the VA, if that seems appropriate. And also we have emergency housing resources and other crisis resources available.
Hey, Chuck, there's another question. Can I answer it?
By all means.
I won't shut up. It's a nightmare. Says, for clarification, I've previously been informed that a DUI and domestic battery without great bodily harm were exclusions from Veterans Court and MICAP. Under the guidelines I read today in the PowerPoint, someone is still eligible under these offenses on a case-by-case basis. And the answer is, it's the case that actually I think was cited by a couple of different people. It's Parento. They certainly can apply to be in the program. And for example, with veterans, if you look at, and I read this with the veterans, a large portion of what they get arrested for are domestic batteries and DUIs. So yes, I mean, we're gonna look at everything to decide whether we should admit them across the board. But yes, they are eligible. Yes, they'll be considered, and yes, they for those charges that you cite, they have been admitted.
Right.
There's another question. Who wants to answer this one?
The question is, has a lawyer representing someone who is not a veteran who is charged with the same crime challenged the Veterans Court?
In other words, someone who's not a veteran wants to be in Veterans Court?
Or to get the same result as a veteran might.
Oh,
Correct.
I think the answer is I've never seen that.
Not that I'm aware of.
Part of it is to be in Veterans Court, you have to either have a substance abuse or substance abuse of some sort or a mental illness. So Veterans Court kind of combines drug court with MICAP. It's not
Well, in fairness to
necessarily
the person who answered the question, it says, or other treatment need for veterans. But you're right. I agree with you. But no, you got to be a veteran to qualify.
Right.
Any other questions?
On the off chance anybody had problems getting the handouts, which are excellent for this particular program, please feel free to reach out to me or Maria at the Bar Association. We will make sure you get a copy of them. They're a resource that I will no doubt go back to. I'd like to thank all our panelists, all our presenters today for an extremely informative, timely, and thorough presentation. I hope everyone gets as much out of it as I did. I appreciate everybody attending and wish everybody the best. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you. Have a nice one.
Thanks,
Take
Maria.
care, everyone.
Thank
Great
you.
job, Maria. Great job, Chuck. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for your patience.
Chuck, I sent you an
Everyone.
email. Just we have to talk about our next meeting.
Okay, got it. All right, great. Thank you. All right.